All right, we are here on a Tuesday. Josh Doring, Chris Brown. Plenty of things happened in the NFL yesterday. We had a football game, but there were also some other interesting things we're going to get to here in segment one. So we're just calling this NFL news from Monday. But before we get into that, Chris, how you doing?
Doing all right. Doing all right. Yeah, you're right. We had a good bit of NFL news. And I mean, I'm pumped up because we had actual MLB stuff happening. I have conflicting thoughts on it. I have conflicting thoughts of being like thrilled that the Padres, that we have a team that's going for it, and also simultaneously like scratching my head at the teams that are trading away aces for salary relief. Um, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I'm pumped up though that we're having baseball things actually happening. We have NFL things happening. Not all of it's good, but yeah, we got a lot going on. Even though it's a kind of a somewhat of a quiet Tuesday in the sports world, it's not super thrilling. I don't think our college basketball slate tonight, for example, is outstanding. But we, despite all that, we've got a good amount of things to get into today here on the show.
Yeah, we got a good lineup that we'll go through right now, real quick. We're going to start with NFL news, Monday Night Football, Dwayne Haskins, those kind of things. Then, as always, unveil our NFL top 10 going into week 17. Humor me, please. Then, a baseball heavy hour two. We're going to talk about the Padres trading everybody and getting all the starting pitchers. And then we're going to do sort of something similar to what we did last week, our New Year's resolutions for baseball, and close it out with what are we doing because it's just a fun segment. But we start in the NFL, Monday Night Football. Josh and I were talking about this yesterday, and I said, this is really the first Monday Night Football that it's interesting because the Bills were still trying to get, trying to position themselves as the clear number two in the AFC behind Kansas City. It's the Patriots and Cam Newton, so that part of it is always interesting. This, of course, is a division that the Patriots have dominated, and so they're in a new position. There were interesting things, but I felt like it paled in contrast to my intrigue about the Steelers going into that Bengals game, and sure enough, it was 10-9, and then the Bills scored 28 more points, and then it wasn't a competitive football game anymore.
Yeah, both these teams, they came out of the gate swinging. I mean, I would say the Patriots came out with energy. They came
Mm-hmm.
out motivated. Um, and then both teams were a little sloppy in different ways early. But yeah, very quickly it became very clear that there was just a huge difference between these two teams. The the Bills are just a significantly better team than the Patriots right now. The division had, like we've talked about, not has already been decided. But last night, the Bills reaffirmed to the football world a real changing of the guard has taken place, at least for now, in the AFC East. The Bills have the best quarterback in the division. They have the best receiver in the division. And those two are connecting on an incredibly high level right now. Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Allen breaking the Bills' single season touchdown record. Diggs setting the Bills' single season record for receiving yards, all in this game. I think they had what? Diggs had 3 touchdowns from Allen. Those two are firing on all cylinders right now. I mean, there are takeaways for both teams. For the Bills, yeah, you're right. This is a team that continues to fire on all cylinders offensively. The defense is playing at the best it has all season, with the playoffs approaching. I mean, this is all of a sudden. Actually, I shouldn't say all of a sudden. We've seen it this year, but in the bigger picture, this is all of a sudden a team that is ready to make a deep playoff run, and they're certainly capable of that. We're going to get into our power rankings, in segment two, but Josh Allen, who was not very long ago basically a one-man roller coaster, essentially, not that long ago in the grand scheme of things, is now, I think we can say he's made the adjustments, he's made the improvements, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And when you have a star receiver like that, when you have a defense that is playing the best it ever has, you're a real threat come the playoffs. And this is a team that I don't really feel a lot differently about them now than I did
Mm-hmm.
before last night's game, but it reaffirmed how I feel about them. It made me more confident that this is a really, really dangerous team. Um, you know, So I'm really high on this Bills team. I continue to be high on this Bills team. It's right. Every team you can find flaws. Even the Chiefs. We're going to talk about them. I think I think not to set a spoiler alert here, but I think we probably both still have them as our number one team in the power rankings. It's not perfect for them either. There are clear reasons where you could be a little bit hesitant about the Chiefs as well. So there's no team that doesn't have some holes, but the Bills right now, I'm about as confident that if I'm putting them on like a confident ranking teams by sort of confidence of whether they're going to be high end or whether they're going to show up for the playoffs or not, the Bills are right up there in tier number one with a few other teams. So I don't think I've said all that much that's new and exciting, but I continue to be high on the Bills right now.
And you contrast that with what happened to the Browns this week.
Right.
And these two teams. Now, the Bills have consistently been in the playoffs since this Sean McDermott, Josh Allen sort of roster building, this group came together and started clicking, but they've never been in a position like this, where they are clearly one of the best teams in football and a legitimate Super Bowl contender. So you contrast that to the Browns, who couldn't. I understand the Browns were shorthanded, they didn't have receivers, they couldn't beat the Jets. The Bills are demolishing these poor average to below average football teams they're playing right now. And they're doing it, as you said, at the most important time of the season. The other thing that Josh Allen did last night, aside from the single season touchdown record and Stephon Diggs setting the single season receiving yards record, Josh Allen also had his eighth 300-yard game. That's a Bills franchise record. I mean, he's having the best. It's pretty impressive to say, but I feel like it's also safe to say he's having the best season by a Bills quarterback ever. Right? He's got another game in there, and he's already doing, or it's at least comparable. You could go to some of Jim Kelly's seasons and things like that, but it's up there with any in Bill's history, and he's only played 15 games. He's got one more to go. It's they're really good, and that's the question I wanted to ask you, and I think it's an interesting part of this. I'm starting to feel like they have a real chance if they get the Chiefs eventually in an AFC Championship game, assuming they're 1-2, and this is the way the best teams end up getting to the final portion of the AFC playoffs. That combination of having the offensive firepower because of the way Allen's playing and because of Stephon Diggs. It's not just that Stephon Diggs makes your offense better. I really think he makes Josh Allen's life that much easier because he doesn't have to try and create everything by himself. He's naturally an improviser. He's from the Brett Favre, Carson Wentz mold, right? Because of his physical gifts, the incredible arm strength, the athleticism, his ability to get outside the pocket and make things happen, his ability to run. But you're not exactly going to be running read options like you do for Lamar Jackson. He's not that. He's not that fast. He's not that good of a runner, but he can do a little bit of everything, which opens up so many possibilities. But he also tries to do everything. He has an incredible amount of confidence, which is good and bad. But when you have Stephon Diggs, it just makes life easier. You just throw him the football. You don't have to try and continue to create magic. The dude is just open.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, it certainly is a significant help to that situation because yeah, there's always this tendency, no matter how well we've seen, um, how well we've seen Josh Allen be, like there's always a part of me that thinks that come a playoff game against a great opponent, there's
Yep.
a chance that he reverts back to making some sloppy
Right.
mistakes.
And it's always
I'm not
going to be
saying
part of who he is.
right, right, exactly right. He's never going to be this flawless quarterback, right? He's never going to be known as the guy who just doesn't make any mistakes ever. It's just right. You said it's just part of who he is. Now we're seeing the best possible version of that in every other aspect, but there's
Mm-hmm.
always that aspect that's going to remain. That matchup would be fantastic, and I think it would come down to a Chiefs Bills AFC Championship game would be really fun to see, and I think you know I think it would be interesting. I think it would come down to we'll talk about the Chiefs. I'm curious. I'm not finding the words very well, but I'm curious. Like the Chiefs, we're going to talk about it coming up in a power rankings, right? There's some reason to believe, like you could look and say, well, they just keep winning games, and they're fact. Who cares that they're close games? But at the same time, there's some reasons for I really think that that the way this Bills team is performing, it is possible that they can beat the Chiefs in a game. Now, if the Chiefs show up at 100%, no, the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL. But I don't think it's that far fetched to see a scenario where this matchup comes to fruition and where we have a really competitive game, and where if the cards fall right, and it doesn't have to be a slim chance, I think that there's a real legitimate chance that if this Bills team is performing on this level across the board, they can make this a really interesting game against the Chiefs if we get to that point. It would be a really, really fun AFC championship game.
And that's, to me, I'm with you, and I'm with you because of the balance. You have to
Mm-hmm.
be elite on both sides of the football to have a
Right.
shot against Kansas City, because they can score 50 on you, and
Mm-hmm.
they have the defense isn't great, but you've got some really good players in there, some all pro caliber players, and multiple of them. One in the defensive line, one in the secondary. They are a good defense. So you have to have the combination of being able to match that offense if it's clicking, and to also have a shot defensively.
Yeah.
The Bills have both pieces.
Right.
And if I'm looking for a formula to beat the Chiefs, I'm leaning toward the team that can score 45 points and
Right.
then has some playmakers defensively, specifically in the secondary, that can make a couple plays, can get a couple stops to maybe make this a 38-35, a 31-28 game instead of 45-42.
Right.
I don't want to play the my defense against Patrick Mahomes game. I want
Yeah.
to play the my offense against Patrick Mahomes with a little help from my defense game. And that's what the Bills
Right.
give you, in my
Right.
estimation, the way that they're
Yeah. 100.
playing right now.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, I'm with you. Yeah. You're not going to win. Yeah. When your best chance if you're in the Bills in that sort of situation is sort of the difference between the Chiefs offense and the Bills offense. Can we offset that? Can we offset that by
Right.
our defense stepping up with some big plays? And right now, the way it looks, the answer is it's possible. It is certainly a possibility. So you're right. I mean, that's how I see it as well. You're not just going to look and say, can we slow down Patrick Mahomes enough? It's can we slow down Patrick Mahomes enough with our offense firing on all cylinders to make this a 42 to 35 game or something like that. So yeah, it's going to be fun to see how if it does play out this way. I think I'm pretty confident it will. I mean, I don't know, as confident as one can be
Mm-hmm.
in both these teams that it's going to work out in that direction. I will say though for the Patriots, because obviously this was a game that wasn't meaningful for them in the broad picture, but it did. This was the worst home loss they've ever had under Bill Belichick. Um, First losing season since his first at the helm in 2000. The second longest streak of consecutive winning seasons in NFL history is over now at 19. Um, there's not a ton to say here. Cam Newton's night, though, was a microcosm of the season.
Yep.
Some success on the ground, horrible struggles throwing the ball, just horrible. 34 yards, fewest by a New England starting quarterback
Yep.
since 1993. I mean, he was skipping the ball off the field. Like, it was just the microcosm of the struggles that they've had this season. Jared Stidham was better than that. That's not exactly saying that much. I don't think he didn't play to the level where New England fans are going to just all of a sudden have all this confidence about him. So it leads the great big question for the Patriots heading into this off season. And of course, the big drama storyline is right. Was this the final symbolic nail on the coffin of this dynasty coming to an end, or just the valley from which they're going to emerge next season? Um, that's the dramatic version of it. But it's going to be an interesting offseason for New England. Of course, they got to figure out that quarterback situation. That's front and center. The pieces that they have around the situation in New England, it's right. They could. I think the answer is that they absolutely can turn this around pretty
Yeah.
quickly. Now, I don't think that it's necessarily going to turn it around and just all of a sudden they're back to 100%. They're back to being this is scary, this incredibly scary team. I don't know if it's going to happen quite to that level, but there are absolutely some offseason moves away from bouncing right back. So it's going to be an interesting storyline to follow this off season. But other than that, it kind of made it really clear. That's the one thing for me this game just did is sort of make it really clear. Yeah, this is where these two teams are at right now.
Yeah.
And Go ahead.
Yeah. There's a balance between the two where the Patriots could be a playoff caliber team next season once the quarterback position gets sorted out, but they're still not better than the Bills because the Bills are just one of the best five in
Right.
position to be one of the best five teams in football for the next couple seasons with the amount of talent
Right.
they have and the fact that Josh Allen is on a rookie contract.
Right. They could bounce back, and it's not going to be returning to what they expect the environment of
Right.
that division to be.
Right.
Even if they do bounce back, bouncing back to where they were, you can't be. It's not going to be exactly where they were, but bouncing back to a large degree, it's not going to be returning to the same environment that they left the
Right.
division. In that it was
Right.
a few years ago.
The Bills have arrived. There's no doubt about
Right.
that. And yeah,
Right.
that was the thing I'm continuing to be curious about is the quarterback position. Josh made this point yesterday that if he really thought Jared Stidham was the guy, he would have got more playing time, and he's not helping his case when he goes and plays.
Mm-hmm.
There's just nothing.
No.
Right, they haven't completely invested in him and said we're going to give him 3 games to prove himself, like the Eagles did with
Right.
Jalen Hurts, for example. But
Right.
also, it's not like everybody, like you said, nobody's clamoring for more Jared Stidham. The the solution is not on that roster. Is the conclusion I have come to, and last night just
Yeah.
reaffirmed that.
Yeah. Definitely.
Other quarterback situation we'll get to quickly here. Dwayne Haskins out in Washington. Very strange. I don't want to say career, but time with that franchise from and even before that, from his career at Ohio State, the way that whole thing played out, to then he gets taken in the first round and it just never really happens. Then you have the COVID policy violations that ultimately resulted in this series of events that led to his release. It's just it's a strange thing, but also not surprising that this is where we are, given everything that's happened.
Right. Yeah. I was looking, and I didn't realize all this how many different events in this timeline had sort of transpired
Mm-hmm.
until I saw this article sort of with the defining moments of the Haskins era, and
Yeah.
I was just reading through it, and I was like, wow, this is a lot of stuff. Like this is sort of it was one thing on top of another, right? Um, he was drafted in the first round. He it sort of became famous where he said, the league done messed up when he got picked 15th. Um, he's his career got off to a slow start. Washington began the season 0-3 last year. Um, there was just all sorts of things. He got chances. He got several
Yep.
chances with this team, and it just didn't work out. He got a chance early last season, and then after a few games, it wasn't going well. They said we got to make a change. Um, he had multiple COVID-19 protocol violations this year. And he even got a chance. The strange thing is, if he was so close to being released, it's kind of strange to the idea that he went out and played on Sunday. Like he was their
Right.
starter on Sunday because it's one of those things where yes, he was really really bad on Sunday against Carolina. He lost a fumble, threw 2 interceptions against Carolina in a game where they were trying to clinch a playoff berth. Um, and so obviously that performance wasn't helping things at all. But it's one of those things where if you're about to release a guy like that, you're probably already about to release a guy like that
Mm-hmm.
before that game starts, which makes it a little bit odd that they went with him in that game. But also, given the circumstances, given their other options, I guess it made sense to take a chance. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just been one thing after another, and it's sort of reached the point where I think the end result, even though we saw these COVID-19 violations and he was stripped of his captain, is
Captain
that the right
C.
word?
I think
Captain
it's
C.
yeah.
Thank you. Yes, he was stripped of his captaincy, and there were things happening there that were obviously problematic. At the end of the day, though, I think what happened, he just wasn't improving on the field at
Mm-hmm.
all. He wasn't making any strides in the right direction. I think had he been improving, had he been making some strides on the field, he would still be on that team right now, despite all those other things, which are obviously a series of problematic events and incidents which are inexcusable. But I think that if there was some on the field progress, the reality is he would still be there. When you put those things together, it's the end for him in with that team. I don't expect any huge rush to sign him from teams. Now he'll get a shot
Yeah.
somewhere. I'm not.
Yep.
I'm not afraid. I'm not thinking that, but I don't think it's going to be all these teams clamoring to get him right away. Um, there was skepticism on him before the draft about maturity
Yep.
concerns, and it proved to continue to be a problem. Um, and when he was on the field again, great play on the field excuses a lot of stuff for NFL teams. They're willing to put up with a lot of problems from a player if they're performing, for better or worse. But he wasn't accurate. He wasn't functional as a playmaker on that field. He did not seem to be in tune with that offense at all at any point where he was out there for the most part. There are a lot of teams that he could end up with. I, had a few ideas. I've read, articles about, could he end up here or there? But at the end of the day, this was interesting in its timing. And of course, the shock value of the fact that you're releasing a first round draft pick, 15th overall from 2019 here in late December 2020. Um, but it was also a long time coming in the sense of the series of events, the performance not getting any better. It wasn't a shock. It was just, for me, as much as it was the timing, I wasn't necessarily expecting it to be until the offseason. It would just be an off-season story. I
Right.
wasn't expecting it to be right now as this team is fighting for a playoff spot, as this team needs to win this upcoming weekend. Not that he was going to go out there and play this upcoming weekend, even if Alex Smith can't go. It wasn't going to be him because this news came just after it was announced that he was going to be like second or third string, even if Alex Smith is out. Um, so I guess I'm talking myself in circles a little bit. It was a surprise that it happened now, but it wasn't really a shock just given all these series of events adding up and the idea that there was no progress on the field, making you feel like this was going to go anywhere positive.
Yeah, it's a question of how do you want him? Do you believe in him? Or
Mm-hmm.
are you looking for reasons to get rid of him? And I think it's pretty fair to say Ron Rivera was looking for reasons to get rid of him. Now, I don't blame Ron
Oh yeah,
Rivera. He
sure.
gave him plenty.
Yeah.
But exactly to your point, if the improvement had been there on the field, if he had been doing positive things for this team, you're not looking for reasons. You're looking for reasons to keep him.
Mm-hmm.
But the off the field stuff plus the on the field stuff, this is not a surprising result. And you mentioned the word that was the point I was going to get to quickly here.
Mm-hmm.
From the beginning, at Ohio State, there was a level of immaturity, and it has continued throughout his time in Washington. What has happened in the last couple weeks, couple months is not new. From the selfie he took at the end of that game when I think it was Case Keenum playing quarterback,
Yeah.
he just clearly has not learned that yet. Hopefully, this is a final wake up call and things change and he does get a second chance. But he said that after the tweet he sent in Ohio State about we're not here to play school. And then all of this stuff happened at the pro level.
Mm-hmm.
That's that was the other thing that came to mind for me. Also, before we get out of here, Jared Goff is not playing week 17. That means undrafted Wake Forest product John Wolford going to get the nod for the Rams. He has never played in an NFL game. They need to win this game or have the Packers beat the Bears to make the playoffs. The goal is to have Goff back for the playoffs if they can get in. I mean, the good news is that they get in if the Packers beat the Bears, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Because
that's
they're
true.
playing the Cardinals, and the
Yeah.
Cardinals are also playing for their playoff lives. So either
Right.
John Wolford's going to become a legend here, or they're going to be really, really big Packers fans.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how I saw a stat how unlikely it is. It's been 7 years since a quarterback has made their debut with the team in Week 17 with the playoff berth on the line. That was Kyle Orton for the 2013 Cowboys.
Ah,
So there you go. But that doesn't happen very much. And yeah, I think they're going to be right. He's either John Wolford's going to have to be fantastic, like you said, or they're going to be having their eyes on that Packers Bears game. Which I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say how that's going to go, but you never know. You never know. You got it's not over till it's over.
right.
So we shall see. Um, it's a real blow though with Jared Goff out. There was some thought like yesterday whether he might be able to come back or
Mm-hmm.
play, but and will he even if he had the surgery, would he be able to make it back for this upcoming weekend? And so now the answer is no. So now the focus for him is recovering so that he can hopefully be ready to go for game one of the playoffs. But they're gonna need some help to get there for sure.
That is NFL news. Take a quick break. When we come back, NFL Top 10 are power rankings of the top 10 teams in the NFL after this week's action. You're watching 110 Daily on the 110 Sports Network.